Thank you very much. Thanks. Well, you know, looking out here in the audience right now, it's lovely to see. I now know what the number 20 looks like, because that's what it looks like. We have here 20 wonderful people, and so I'm so happy that you're here. And of course, I don't know where the Facebook audience is, but here in New York City, it's our first day that is so beautiful in the city, and I'm so happy that this group is here, because if I wasn't here, I wouldn't be here, okay? You guys are so sweet to be here, because I live in the Village, and it's a very, in the Village, if you know, you're all New Yorkers, I'm sure, the Village is so quaint and charming, and there's plenty of parks, so I'd be out there in some shorts just sitting in the park. But as you all know, the reason why I'm here is to talk about the agenda of photography. I don't know, how many months ago did you invite me to do this, Deborah?
Several months ago.
Yeah. So like most of us, you know, we're either checking our phones or we're checking some kind of feed, and suddenly a beep goes off, and it was Deborah. And so she had asked me, would I be interested in doing this? And of course, B&H being this sort of, this is the sort of nirvana of the photography world. Certainly there are other places in town that might be closer, but if you need a superstore, this is the place. I mean, I was so thrilled to walk up the stairs and sort of come around and see what's going on here. It's like you want everything, don't you? It's sort of, and to the point of the agenda, these people have it nailed about the agenda of photography. This is the beginning and the end of where photography, you know, when you need something to take a picture. According to the Webster's Dictionary, the definition of agenda is an outline of things to be considered, or a plan or a program. And hopefully I put together this plan and this program to talk to you folks, but as I always tell most of my friends and people that buy my works, that photographers speak through their photographs, and it's sort of best to be quiet and just let your photographs speak for themselves. The picture that you see there is from a series called Altered Image, and that's that's Andy Warhol, but the other one was Altered Image, was the idea of altering somebody's image. These were not, that's Steve Rubel, by the way. They're not drag photographs. They were photographs. It's the idea, like Cindy Sherman, this idea of changing one's identity. I have these pictures kind of on a loop, and then we'll go back to some of them and talk about them later. But I have my prepared speech, sort of the way Donald Trump has his prepared speech. But I will speak off the cuff like Donald does, much to his dismay. So the agenda of photography, what is it? How has it changed from the beginning of photography until now? And of course, we all know that the reasons why we take pictures certainly is different for all of us. Some of us make a living at it. Some of us do it for great pleasure. Some of us do it just for sort of on this, you know, we see something right in front of us and we take a picture. Or in the case of, I would say, all the millennials, picture taking has become more of a way of life. It's totally integrated into who they are and how they perceive themselves and how they deal with the rest of the world, because pictures sort of identify themselves with their friends and who their friends are. That's Marianne Faithfull, by the way. So from the beginning of my photo career, I have noticed a complete change in the way that photography has been dealt with, from the analog years of film with its agenda of negatives, from the current incarnation from its current incarnation of film that has become digital pictures, and now anyone can take a picture from their phone. The way the viewer deals with photography from the very early years of photography, where the photographers look towards painters for examples of how to compose a photograph. Early photography, they really didn't know that when the technology was there, were like, what do you do with this box and stuff? And they didn't know what to do. So from what I had read and have read, the early photographers would look at painters and see what they did. And so if you see a lot of the early photographs, they're either portraits of people or they're usually landscapes, which are very much what painters do all the time. And they learned that, how to compose a photograph, as today, where the immediacy of pictures becomes the learning tool. In other words, because you could take a picture with a digital camera or with a cell phone, and immediately you get to see what the thing looks like. And so if you don't like it, you can erase it or take another one. But the learning curve is so quick. I remember when I was first taking pictures, the way I would end up learning is, you know, you take your pictures, you send them to a lab, and then you get them developed, and then they come back, and they're all either too light or too dark or somewhere in between. And that's the learning curve. But that was the learning curve that took 3-4 days, or even if you did it in your darkroom, it took 4 or 5 hours. It wasn't immediate like it is today. People learn how to take pictures, I think, or at least to appreciate pictures in a much quicker way than they have ever done, ever. I mean, my big issue, I remember, I'll go back to my prepared talk. I remember in the early, where were we here? Since I've been taking pictures in the late 1970s, there's always been about my immediate response to my surroundings, about where I was and what I was supposed to do at that time. So for me, it was, my agenda with pictures was, you know, where am I? Like right now, if I'm in front of you people, my agenda would be to take pictures of you guys. I mean, of course, that changes if you're a commercial photographer and you get a job. Well, the agenda appears to be money. But somewhere in between that agenda of money and taking pictures is you find that middle ground of still being true to yourself and what you do. This is I have to say, that this is a much more studious and serious crowd than I'm used to, because I'm used to a crowd that will just sit and laugh at everything, and I can make jokes or make fun of you in the audience. And this is not, you guys look all like very serious photography people. So I'm happy to, you've put me on the spot, not really, but you've put me more ill at ease than I thought I could have been. Anyhow, and of course there's the audience out there on Facebook, which wherever they are, welcome to also. My whole thing was about enjoying the moment, document the moment, or just let the moment appear. I usually choose to photograph what was in front of me, and that was pretty much remained the same. I mean, early on, my first camera was a Nikon camera, and my biggest issues were, I remember it was the beginning of like automation of cameras, and a friend said, oh, you can't just, you got to buy a light meter. And so the light meter and the camera were the biggest problems for me, because I'm a person that's nervous and anxious and eager to get things done, like take a picture. And so for me, the idea of having to take a light reading and then coming back and resetting the camera and getting into that just didn't appeal to me. So that was my biggest issue at the beginning. And of course, later on in life, when digital cameras came about, it was so thrilling. And of course, the advent of technology where you didn't really have to think. That said, I did learn how to take pictures with f-stops and all of that, and how to look at, you know, and of course, often I would hire people to do that, so that worked out even better. By the way, that picture is when the Berlin Wall came down. So in the 48 years that I've been taking pictures, I remember early on about that at the turn of the century, which I'm not referring to, I was there at the turn of the century, but about that photography. Early photographers at that time had no agenda. They were learning what their agenda was. You know, their biggest thing was to figure out, what do I do with this camera? How do I take the pictures? And by the way, I put these on a rolling loop here, these pictures. A lot of the pictures are from this book, Everything, which is mostly which is all black and white. But because so much of my oeuvre and my career has been with my years and my 10-year friendship with Andy Warhol, that I did put some Warhol pictures in here because it's sort of like being the Rolling Stones or the Beatles. You have to sing some of those hits, otherwise you lose your audience completely. So, so I do have some of those hits in there, all the Warhol hits. Except I was back about the photographers had no agenda, so their thing was to use the technology and how to use the technology. They started what was in front of them, and they mostly documented the moment which was in front of them. As they became more comfortable with the technology, photographers became free to experiment with subject matter. Whether it's early analog film, the digital camera, or finally the camera phone, all of us have had to become familiar with technology and then become free to explore it. All of us know the first time we all had cell phones and camera phones, you know, even if we were really expert photographers with real cameras and analog film, to use a camera phone. I mean, for the longest time, I didn't use my phone, my camera on my phone, because I thought that would dilute me and my desires to take pictures. I don't want to say like as a real photographer, but for the longest time I felt that was the way it was. In other words, real photographers used cameras and other people just used their camera phones, you know what I mean? But that gave way because the peer pressure is so heavy to do that kind of stuff that at this time now, I do take pictures with my camera phone, and I have lots of camera phone. Do you all take pictures with your phones? Yeah. And this gentleman says, no, you don't? Not really? Oh, good. There's one holdout. How long will I didn't do it for years and years, and then I'd find myself in an event or someplace, and I realized that's such a cool thing, and I don't have my camera with me, and so you just use your phone, because it's just, for the longest time, I don't know, almost 20 years ago, I did a thing for the Spanish government, the Minister of Culture for the city-state of Valencia, Spain. I had a big exhibition at the IVAM, which is their big museum in Valencia, Spain, and was asked if I would do a project in Spain. And of course, that was just at the beginning of digital photography, where these little small cameras had like 12 megapixels, you know what I mean? It was really at the beginning. But the pictures were really good, except you could only blow them up like 5x7 if you wanted a good picture. The Minister of Culture there, they had given me the commission for this, and they were paying me $100,000 just to do a book for them and document the thing. And I showed up with this, you know, $200 camera that took tiny pictures. And of course, they were really, they were a little bit surprised, but they thought, well, you know, he's American, he's from New York, he must know what he's doing. Of course, midway through the project, they were getting nervous. And so they asked me to take some analog pictures, which I have all of those negatives, but we never used any of them, actually, because all along I knew that what I was going to do, I was going to take all the small pictures and I was going to put them in a book, and I was going to make stories with the pictures, because they didn't have to be big pictures, you know what I mean? As long as they gave you the information, it was okay. To me, it didn't matter the pixel size. So I have been in analog photography for many, many years, and the guy that runs my studio archives, Peter Weiss, who isn't here today, he manages all my pictures from the 70s, 80s, and 90s, which I don't. I'm not involved with that. I pretty much am into being right here, right now. I'm not a melancholy kind of person. I don't look at the past so much. I'm very in the moment, and so for me, hanging around with my pictures of Andy Warhol and what do you call it, Diana Vreeland or Mick Jagger or Malcolm Forbes, or all the people that I've been lucky enough to meet throughout my career, I'm not that interested in hanging around. It was fun to hang around with them when I was there, but to sort of live in that moment now, it's not really living in that moment. It's not a place I want to be. So I told you that story about the light meter thing, and so I crossed that off right there. As far as the agenda of light goes, we all know that. Whether you're taking a digital picture, whether you're taking an analog picture, or whether you're taking a picture with your phone, all of us, even at the simplest level, we'll take a picture and then suddenly it looks like, oh, it's too dark. It's too light. So I was talking about the agenda of light and how to use it. And, you know, I talked about earlier I talked about the light meter and how that really scared me. It always has scared me. But that has always been an ongoing issue about light and where light is, you know. And so even for a professional photographer, you know, whether in a studio setting or outside taking pictures, it's always about, like, where is the light coming from? What does the subject look like in the light? And even to the simplest level of, you take the picture and is it too light or is it too dark? So that's an issue. This was a famous football player that I photographed in Chicago, and that was many years ago. But there's an example of light and where it comes from. And the same thing goes for this lady with the wig. Yeah. So, and of course, my agenda has changed. My agenda has changed. I still love taking pictures of what is in front of me. And that's why this recent book of mine, everything was to show my friends and the people around me, but mostly to show myself. And then hopefully, if you like those pictures, you can share with me in that. My work is what I have seen from so many years with my camera and my lens and myself. Actually, a long time ago, people used to, because I always used to do only black and white pictures, and people used to ask me, well, do you know how to take color pictures? And I said, yeah, I'm taking them right now. It just so happens I have black and white film in the camera, you know, because, and I had often thought it would be neat to be able to, this was before digital, but to put a little, you know, when you look through the lens of a camera, to put a little black and white thing, because when you look through it, when you're doing analog pictures, you're always seeing color pictures. So it would have been, they should have had some little thing where you could put, and you would just see the black and white pictures, which all of those answers, thankfully, have been addressed in the world of digital photography, because, you know, you can take, if you take TIFFs, if you take raw files with a JPEG, you know, together, the TIFFs the raw files are our negatives, and the TIFFs are our final thing. So we're always taking color pictures with the raw information in the camera. I pretty much, and of course, the ultimate agenda for me today was to be here with you folks and the people on Facebook who are watching this live, streaming on the B&H event. But it's always a great treat to come up here to B&H. As I mentioned earlier to Deborah, I don't live in B&H country because I live down on 20th Street, and I won't mention anything else, but I have a place that's really close by. But to come up here is so fun, because this is like, if the Facebook viewers, if you haven't been to this store, this is like Disneyland. If you're a photographer, or you're into speakers or computers or amplifiers or anything that you plug in, right? I mean, pretty much. Are there any wind-up things here? I don't think so, right? There's no wind-up things here. So, you know, I looked at the schedule yesterday, and I know that they had booked me in here from 4 to 6. So if you think that I can talk from 4 to 6, it's not going to happen, folks. I had this prepared, and I spoke as much as I could about that. So this is where it started. Actually, this is where, this is sort of interesting, because this looks like a really beautiful spot, but a good friend of ours, Mark Sink, this is out in Colorado, and Lynn might be, it's up in something, and when you go through passes, and I took this picture, and it was so beautiful, and I thought, oh, this is so beautiful. But this was all, Idaho, isn't it? No, this isn't Colorado. This is all waste, like oil and smudge and everything. And because I remember, oh, it looks so beautiful there. And then when I was told this is all like, you know, biohazardous waste, it's sort of like, it's sort of like photography can lie, you know? And so these are just objects and stuff. That's that idea about what's in front of you sometimes, you know what I mean? If you're in a hotel room and you just have, you know, I often hear like, oh, you know, you see things that I don't see, you know what I mean? We all hear that line, you know what I mean? And so, you know, we have our eyes open, and that was this was Bob. This was somebody had commissioned this portrait. This dog was on death's doorway. So there you go. What about our guy up here again, you know? I should send you to...
I'll be your assistant.
Yeah, there. This guy, this is TV sometimes. You know, I remember early on people would say, well, do you think you can photograph this person? And I always would say, absolutely. You know, you can photograph everybody. Just go get a video of them and then just freeze frame it and photograph them. Lynn won't like that because... You do that? Yeah. Well, did I teach you that about taking other people's photos? Oh, stop it. I don't know, but there seems to be a lot of dogs here. That was about the eyes, that last person. That was some car thing, but look at that car, beautiful. I don't know what that is. Let's see. Yeah, something from the 40s or 50s.
You like taking pictures of cars?
Oh yeah, that's the one that they let slip in. You know what I mean? Because it's just melons. Actually, these are honeydew melons. One of my, I actually, this was something for Interview magazine, and I remember doing something about the excitement of fruit, and the stylist put this all together. These are candy kisses, carrots, honeydew melons, strawberries, charms. That's, what do they call that? No, sweet. They're right in season. What are these called, Paul? These are in season. You eat them raw. Snap.
Snappy. Kiwi?
What?
That's what it looks like.
Yeah, they're good though. And that was when I like to photograph everything. I really do. That's why this book is called Everything. I really enjoy it. I have to say, I wasn't really influenced by anybody, but I was inspired by Man Ray, because Man Ray, like, he took pictures, he did paintings, he did all the kind of different stuff. I mean, I hung out with Andy for a long time, for 10 years, from 76 to 86. And we were great pals, and we had great energy. And people always say, what was it like to be his friend? And I remind them, the better question is, says, what was him to be my friend? You know what I mean? Because always people see it from that perspective. But we kind of, he was at 17th Street and Union Square, and I lived in the West Village. And so, it was easy to be his friend. This was in Spain. That's a young actor. That's like that ribbon candy at Christmas that you eat. I don't know why that's in there. That was an edit. I guess it's about machinery, some sort of another, right? That's Paolo Pasolini. He was murdered by a hustler. I remember that story, yeah. That's Anthony Perkins, the model. No, not the model, the actor. This was something I did for Interview magazine. These are two pretty famous actors who I can't remember their names. This was Victor Bockris. You remember Victor, don't you? That was right after Rene Ricard had gotten into a fight with him about something, and Rene Ricard had broken a glass. This is what happens with drunks. They get crazy and they do things. He was fighting, he broke the glass, and Rene Ricard jammed the glass into his face. And so he had gone to when there was a St. Vincent's Hospital, and he had just come back, and I guess he's either having coffee or another drink, I don't know. That's Pedro Almodovar, the movie maker. This was on one of my big trips to Morocco, hence the theme restaurant and the theme person. Check out those bell-bottom pants. Yeah. Look at those and those shoes. And of course, that car is an amazing car, a Citroen. This is some stuff from Morocco. These are the wealthy people that I was traveling with. She was Jeanette Longoria from Texas, and this was her husband, her Mexican husband. And they had a lot of money. This is actually in Madrid, Spain, during some kind of thing where they were showing off the tanks. I was really impressed. That's in Las Vegas. Isn't that a while? That's what the hotels used to look like. And that is Roy Lichtenstein and Bob Rauschenberg. These are the people that were so accessible at the time in New York City. They were just around, you know what I mean? These are some of the great artists that America has given the world. Lovers. This is the sister to the Queen of Spain. That's, who is that? Emilio Saliquet? Yeah. Mick Jagger at the Factory, 860 Broadway. Oh, back here, I'll just point out, Andy used to document everything, and here was Andy's tape recorder, and that was on, and he was always taping every conversation. This picture is purposefully upside down because my very first book was called Christopher Makos, Andy Warhol, and it was really to reference the kind of crazy upside down world that I had had for those 10 years. And it was really cool because the typeface was, I think it said Warhol here, and then it said Makos. And the printer, when we would run advertisements and stuff for the book, they would always correct it. And of course, that was so cool because then we'd have to get free ads because we told them, you didn't do it the way we asked you to do it. I mean, they were trying to make a correction and they didn't know that's what we wanted. That's, of course, the Liza Minnelli and John Lennon. This is from some Polaroids. I threw some just other pictures in here, but this is some Polaroids. When the Polaroid, the SX70s were coming out, the idea of these cameras was so amazing because they were like the immediacy of pictures again, that you could take a picture and in 60 seconds you'd have a picture, which is cool. So I still have some of these. They're in really great condition because the Polaroid Corporation, which used to be out of Massachusetts, Cambridge, Massachusetts, they came to the factory and gave us all big boxes of film. The film was really expensive. I loved it, but when I ran out of film, I didn't buy any more of it. And so what happened is I just took all these pictures and put them in really safe places because the emulsion is fragile. And a few years ago, an Italian publisher came to me and said, let's publish a book of your Polaroids, which you know so well. and we published that book. And I was lucky because the thing I can suggest to you is take good care of your pictures, whether they're film or they're digital. If they're digital, back them up. If they're film, keep them in archival, glassines, and take good care of them because they are you. If that's what you do as a living and what you love to do, that's your memory. This actually represents some of the elements of Warhol's career. This is his book publishing career. He did a bunch of books. This was his magazine publishing because he published magazines. And there were two more, one holding a film canister, which is to represent his film career, and there's another one holding a painting to represent his painting career. This is part of the royal family of Spain. There he is holding the canister of film, as I mentioned, that he had like 4 different careers. And there's his painting career. So those are the 4 things. They're not in order, and recently a collector bought all 4 of those because it's a really nice little tidy thing of one thing representing somebody's entire career. Of course, that's John F. Kennedy Jr. on the right, and that's at the time the girlfriend he was dating at the time. Oh, sorry about that. This is from a series of kissing pictures, and these pictures, I used to do the last 2 pages in Interview magazine, and every month I'd have to come up with a theme or an idea. And so we are approaching the month of February, and of course, what's in February? Valentine's Day. So because I was always at the factory, there was always these famous people coming to the factory. I told Andy, I said, I want you to go and kiss these people. And so I have a bunch of series of this, and this is one of them, and this is him kissing the architect, Phil Johnson. Here he is out at the Glass House in New Canaan, Connecticut, and it's open to the public. I mean, you have to go, but if you haven't been, that's a very cool space to be. Here, I don't know if we saw that. And this is a very interesting series of pictures. When Warhol was, there was that period where like Sony had new cameras and new TVs, and they came to him and asked him, oh, will you do a product endorsement for our new TV or our new camera? And so Fred Hughes, his business manager, didn't know, well, how do we price this? What do we do? So they came up with the novel idea of him being a model for the Ford modeling agency. And so he needed a portfolio because then they could do special bookings, you know what I mean? So these are some of his pictures from his portfolio, model portfolio that I did. And we have a whole bunch of other things. And I don't know if they're in here, but he was so awkward with his, he's a painter, so he's used to playing with his hands. So there may be a few others here where you see he doesn't know what to do with his hands. Here's an example, like, what's that all about? You know, this is back from a trip from China. And actually, the story with this is we had gone to China in 1985 or was it okay 82, and it was an amazing trip. We went to the friendship store where you buy all your things, your touristic things. Andy bought hats and jackets, all this kind of stuff. We get out to the Pan American Lounge, and they said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Royal," and we were all traveling in first class, but you're way over your luggage. You got to pay a couple of $1,000s. So he paid it begrudgingly. Thought, he was upset. We come back to the United States, and his assistant, Benjamin Liu, who was nicknamed Ming Vaz, was his Chinese guy, and his name was Ming Vaz, had been down in Chinatown and reported back to Andy that all the stuff that we bought in China was down in Chinatown for half the price. So he was pretty pissed off about that. So every picture does have a story, and I guess contrary to what I said about pictures should tell a story, sometimes they need a caption. And that's why I'm here. Here he is doing a portrait with his big shot camera. This camera was like a 1998. See, it just had those little flash cube things that turned around. This was $19, and it had a film in there. This was the Stephen Sprouse dress. It's a short black dress, which is so popular now. Really short dresses, and you see this sort of glass things. She has a brand new album out. She's still pretty cool. This is at one of the lunches. Again, he was always documenting. Here he is of the moment with his Minox camera, flash. Here he is documenting it with his, Andy was the ultimate documentateur. This is called The Gang of Four. It's Halston on the right, Bianca Jagger, Andy, and Liza Minnelli, and that was at Studio 54, which was, and here's a picture of Calvin Klein. That must be a smaller file. I've got this tiny. But that's Calvin Klein out at his Fire Island house. Here's Jean-Michel Basquiat. And there's a significance to this blow-up globe. It's not insignificant that he's holding Africa in front of him. He felt like he was the token Negro in the art scene at the time, because all the art dealer, he was like the only black artist that was being represented at the time. It was like Julian Schnabel, Keith Haring, it was a bunch of other people, and so he felt like he was the token black artist. And he resented that, actually, and whenever he could make a remark about it, he would. And that's why in my portrait of him, and it's an inflatable globe that can be deflated, so. Here is Keith Haring, who was part of that, sort of the Rat Pack of that art scene then. And here is Andy. Oh gosh, look, it's 4 o'clock. Oh wait, is this for 5 o'clock? So.
You have another hour?
No, I don't have another hour. They said you could do this for as long as you want. We'll do this until you're exhausted from it. Do you want me to keep showing you pictures?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Yes, really? Okay. So here he is. These are from the model portfolio. Check out the hands. Didn't know what to do. Look at this. Is this like a really awkward posing with the hands? Again, what model poses like this, right? Look at this. Okay, what was that? Like that. Here, take my picture. That's a really attractive pose, isn't it? This is me playing with still objects. That's your story, still objects. You know what I mean? Like this here, this same thing. Is that a pose? Like, if you're a photographer, you want to take my picture?
Why didn't you direct it?
Because I like people to show themselves to me. I really like that. Sure, if I directed them, then every single picture of mine of all the different people would look the same, because it comes from one mindset. So sure, sometimes I direct people when they need it. I photographed Elizabeth Taylor for Malcolm Forbes in France, in Normandy, France. It is Playpen, his sort of guy, place at Chateau Balleroy, and invited lots of interesting people. And we had a sofa, and I had one sofa and like 8 different people, and they came on the sofa. Elizabeth Taylor, of course, has been a movie star most of her adult life, and so she was a movie star. And so when it came to be photographed, she kept the photographer or the director, whoever, waiting, because she was insecure. So when I realized what was going on, you know, she was, all of her men that she was married to, Richard Burton, I want to say Sweeney Todd, but no, what? Yeah, Eddie Fisher and Mike Todd were all really strong men, and so were all of her directors. And once I realized that, I was really strong, and I directed her because she needed directing. A lot of times, if you're photographing actors or actresses, you really need to be a director with them because they don't know what to do. Clearly, he didn't, but he made an attempt at it. Here, this is from one of my most famous collaborations with him. It's called Altered Image. It's that thing about altering somebody's image. This picture has been shown at the Met. It's on the cover of one of my books. It's a pretty famous picture. And you can see he's not wearing a dress. Halston, the designer at the time, the fashion designer, asked us if we wanted to borrow a Halston dress. We said no, thank you, because we weren't trying to do drag. We were trying to just change altering his image. He's wearing his Levi's, he's wearing his Rolex, he's wearing his Brooks Brothers shirt and a regular tie. So it's clear that he's not trying to be getting into drag. This is another close-up of that picture. There are other pictures I'll point out if you're sort of understand about these pictures. We did 2 shoots, one where we did it with a theatrical person, and another we did with a fashion person. And if you want to get a really pretty girl, let's see, like we'll go to you or maybe you, and we turn you into, we'd have to take spirit gum, and you take spirit gum and you pull it all close against you, and then you paint the face white. And then once you paint the face white, you have a canvas, and then you have a really good artist to come and then paint on that canvas. And that's what we did with his face. Hence, you see the spirit gum on here, and then all of this, we painted the face white, and then we inserted a face. There you go. Those are pretty amazing pictures, I have to say. The attitude in these things. Can I help you? I love that wig too. That's quite a good wig. This is one of Andy's favorite pictures, because this was at the zenith of who he was. Sometimes it takes a lot of years before one has that self-realization of who you are and how to dress and how to be. And he finally found that with the help of people like Stephen Sprouse, people that he worked with, and I had known him for so long. It's sort of like when you know a person for a long time, you know who they are, and you know how to have them in front of you so that you can get the essence of who these people are. Taking pictures is pretty simple, just aiming and shooting, but actually finding out who the person is a much more complicated idea and project. And I often try to find out. If people want to be photographed by me, just because they're a pretty boy or a pretty girl, I won't take their pictures just based on that. I'll have to talk to them. I'll have to meet them in person. And if I feel there's some kind of soul, or maybe the lack of a complete soul, then I'll photograph them. This is actually the funeral card that was used at Annie's funeral. This is in front of his apartment in 15 Rue Cherche-Midi in Paris. And this is the card that they used for his memorial service. This is Steve Rubell sitting on the porch of Calvin Klein's house out at Fire Island. And of course, we all know Stephen Rubell and Ian Schrager are the people that invented Nightlife and Studio 54, which became a car crash. And that's Muhammad Ali. Jack Nicholson, actually out in Aspen, where Lynn Goldsmith lives half of her life. And that's for our Brazilian. Oh, no, this is for our Rio. Is anybody? No, you're from Sao Paulo, right? Somebody back there, yeah. Actually, this was a fun trip. This is Bianca Jagger down in the rainforest in Guatemala. And Sting and Kenny Scharf and a bunch of sort of famous people decided to do a trip to the rainforest to bring attention to the rainforest. And so Bianca, who was from Nicaragua, she somehow had a bead on some kind of shamans or something. And I don't know, there's a reason why it's called the rainforest. It always rains. It was the most unpleasant experience you could ever imagine. I didn't like it. I didn't like going down there at all. But because you had to go in drapes in the mud, and I mean, look at everybody. Look at all the expression here. Nobody is very happy, right? I mean, she's not very happy either. I mean, it wasn't that much fun to be down there. That's my obsession with cars and dogs and still lifes. That dog was so interesting to be around. Actually, these two pictures are next to each other, which you're not seeing, but they're in the book somewhere. This lighting is a lighting that it's called half lighting, and pretty much all of my lighting is with one light. I'm a really simple guy. I don't like a lot of complicated stuff. I like to have one setting and then let the person move around in that setting. I mean, if you want to get a lot of pictures, it's best to keep your setting still and let the person emerge. I mean, unless you want to direct them. But if you want them to emerge and you know you're going to do that with the person, just set up the lighting. And this is I usually just have one light over here. There's one light here. They're far enough away so that the background, which is a white seamless, becomes gray. And you have to set, the numbers down there. Set it on medium, simmer. You put it on simmer, and then you have your light in your white box over here, and it picks up all of the highlights, and you just do it, and you have half lighting. And of course, you do that, you shut off all the lights, and you just have the modeling lamp on. Do you know what I mean? So you can really see. It's like a painter. It's like painting the subject matter with light. There's a Citroën in Greece. These pictures are all, this is sort of half lighting, but not really. This is my, that's Marianne Faithfull. Perry Mason, and who was the secretary? Della Reese? Della Street. Oh, good. This is a really good crowd that knows their TV trivia. That's the USS America. That's actually Jacques Fieschi-Paul.
Wow.
Can you believe that? Isn't that unbelievable?
He's a filmmaker and screenwriter.
But that's really young, isn't it?
Yeah, many years ago.
I go to France a lot. This is Michelle Loud from the TV series An American Family on a road trip. Do you know who that is? What? Somebody says that. What?
Is it Robert Chambers?
Yeah, that's right, Robert Chambers. Bingo. Bingo. Here, you get. Go ahead. She won something,
Was that taken from TV?
Yeah. This actually is a picture taken in the coastal resort city of Agame. And these are rich Cairenes from Cairo, from Egypt. That's Roger. That's Paul. That's Roger Chakal.
Yeah.
That's Roland Chakal's brother. Where are we? This is some pool stuff. That's Matt Dillon, a very young 16-year-old Matt Dillon. And that is a young French painter. And that's him there. Who is that? There you go, okay.
No,
Are you all right?
I'm good.
Okay. I love airplane pictures all the time. It's so much fun. This is actually in that trip that I was talking about. Well, no, it was one of the trips I took with Malcolm Forbes. He had his own private plane, and he'd fly around the world with like motorcycle guys. And I was one of the lucky ones to go on one of these trips. And this was in Turkey. And this is Suleiman the Magnificent, and that was a balloon that he had made. And we went to different places like Cappadocia and different, not Istanbul, but the other main city. And he'd, very early in the morning would inflate these balloons, and I wouldn't be up because you have to be, to do these hot air balloons, you have to do it like 6 or 7 in the morning, which means you have to be up at 5. So I would send an assistant to take the pictures. Oh, here's Malcolm arriving in his, some kind of this is a Lamborghini Jeep, the version of a Lamborghini Jeep. And this was a 727 that he flew around in. There's Malcolm at the poolside in Turkey. And of course, the Turkish Prime Minister is in the country today. That's in a very early Chris Makos. Check out the boots tucked in. This is Roland, this is Roland Paul, Roland Chakal.
I know.
Oh yeah, and self-portrait, delicately place the gloves on there.
There's a lot going
I like him. Who's that? Oh, everybody knows that. Oh, that's very good. Okay. That's a good shoe, right? Two heels. I love that shoe. That's early record time, Warner Brothers Records. That was a model somewhere in France that was hanging around with Warhol and myself during a whole French thing. That's actually a street down in the West Village, close to where I live, quite a few years ago, actually. That's Tom Ford, the designer. Just imagine that without hair. It looks like who?
He looks about 17. How old is he?
Around that age, yeah.
Oh, really?
That's on top of the Duomo in Milan. That is an art dealer. Again, Keith Haring. Objects, fashion. That's part of my white trash book. From a very early age on, I've always been lucky to be around either art dealers or rich people or whatever. And I've been flying around in private planes and jets for a really long time. And you asked about access and stuff. When you're in that kind of world of stuff, I have to say that too, it is better to be pretty and young. When I first came to New York City, I was pretty, young, I was blonde, blue-eyed, and it's much easier. I'm not saying anything about anything else, but people love surface stuff, you know what I mean? And so if you can trick the system some way, you can make it work for you. And this was, what?
What was he doing?
That was me.
That's him.
Really?
Yeah.
Where are you from?
Pardon? That's somewhere in Milan, Italy.
Same where you
Where were you born and raised? Or hometown?
Where was I? Oh, so I have a very complicated situation. I was raised by wolves in South Florida. No, I actually grew up in Lowell, Massachusetts, the home of Jack Kerouac and Betty Davis, until I was about 13. And then 13 to 20 or 19, I spent in Southern California. That early thing up until 13, I would go to Europe because my mom's Italian. So I'd go to Europe every summer. So I have all this Europe stuff in me, East Coast stuff, West Coast kooky teenage years. And then I moved to New York City when I was 20. Remember, pretty, blonde eyes, blue, that whole story. Yeah. And so I had a good time all of my life. I continued to have a good time. And the band played on. That's an Italian hustler. Can you tell us an Italian hustler? Oh yeah, that's good for you, honey. It's your kind of photo. It's your kind of photo. It's your kind of thing. Take a good look, okay? Marty, you like that sort of thing, don't you? Not anymore. Okay, you're quiet. That's an actor, actually, who became a drug addict. I forget his name. A pretty actor. That's actually when they broke down the Berlin Wall, and that's that famous bridge where they exchanged the spies.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if you saw that movie with Tom Hanks, Bridge of Spies or something. It looks familiar, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. And that's that bridge. You can still go to that bridge. I actually flew there, when I heard this was going on, I actually got a plane and went over, and it was so much fun to do that. That's Vincent and Shelley. They're still people in my lives. They were part of the Warhol factory. Vincent Fremont used to kind of run the factory, and that was his then girlfriend and now wife for 25 years. That's a book from White Trash. That's a picture from White Trash. These are pictures that were part, when I put this together last night, in 25 minutes, that I think it's all the pictures that were just in the folder for this book, because not all, this is not in the book, is it, Marta?
I don't think so.
No. So you're seeing behind the, I mean,
Is this Avila?
this, yeah, thank you for helping me because I wouldn't have, this is Avila in Spain. If you ever get a chance, that's a beautiful place. And this is in downtown London with this Buick. Isn't that wild? This is actually a friend of mine who had that car. That's her there. This was at, you know, when the Queen does this thing every year and they all wear hats. What is that called, Marta?
Ascot.
There you go. Whoever said that, that's right, Ascot. So I got to go to that. That was really fun. That's some kind of other place. There's Halston. That's out of focus because he was always in drugs. He was such a cokehead. So it was sort of, I thought that was appropriate. And a lot of these pictures are for the last 2 pages of my column called, it was called Out or In, I can't remember. That's the singer, performer, Miguel Bosé. And that's Agatha de la Prada. She's a famous dress designer. And there's Pedro again. That's Alaska. She was part of La Movida. La Movida is a movement that was in Madrid at the time, and it's sort of like the art movement here in New York City. And it happened like the movement happened after Franco, the dictator that ran Spain for many, many years. When he died, like 5 or 6 years after that, there was this big flourishing of the art scene. And of course, these people that I showed you, Miguel Bosé, Pedro Almodovar, Alaska, Agatha de la Prada, they were all part of this art scene that happened kind of spontaneously. This is, that's Peter Wise playing the accordion. That's the guy that runs my studio archives, can you believe it? He's the keeper of all of the analog pictures. That's about light and shadow, clearly. This is all Italy. That's a picture somewhere in Italy. How did this make it in there? There's a guy in a bikini here. I had to take all the bikinis out. Have you done an event thing here? Because you have to take no girls in bikinis. You have to be really careful about the flesh, which is okay. It was a nice editing process, but I don't know how that slipped through. That's my aunt, actually. That's a French actor. That's Angel Jack. Any of you remember the, what's the name of that group? It was a group. What?
No.
Angels of Light. It was a sort of performance. That's the current king of Belgium, Morocco. They had asked me to come over and photograph him for Interview magazine. I can't. This was in Brussels, in Belgium. I don't know if you travel much or if you've been there. But Belgium, I mean, Brussels is right close to Paris. It's right close to Amsterdam. It's right close to all the big cities. And like, there's nothing to do there. It's like, why would you ever go there? So I went there on a Monday. I couldn't stand being there. I told the royal family, we got to like Thursday. I said, look, I'm out of here. Either you're doing it or you don't. And then, of course, they put it together. And then on Friday, like 3 hours before we're leaving, they got it together. And there he is right now. This is actually Susanne Bartsch, who is still sort of the queen of the night. She's still doing parties and everything. It's sort of unbelievable. I love this picture because this is an Aeromexico plane. And like, how did all these Arabs book this flight? Where were they going? And smoking on a plane. I mean, when have you seen that? This is the brother of a famous boxing family. And that is somebody from a rock band in West Coast. That's Billy Beyond. That's Brian Smith, who's a really famous photographer now. That is, I forget her name. That's from my horse series. I've done a book with Marta called Equipose, and it's all horses. That's the back of the head of Andy. We're taking a plane trip out to the Cape Cod. That's something from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. I forget his name. Anthony Kiedis. Oh, actually, everybody now has had a Haagen-Dazs ice cream bar, but there was a time in history that they weren't Haagen-Dazs ice cream bars, and they had come to the factory and they said, "Oh, we will hand dip these ice cream bars for you and make brand new ones for you, and you can photograph them and put them in your column." And so these were the first Haagen-Dazs dipped ice cream bars. That's this beautiful dog called Blue. I think we started here, didn't we? Does anybody remember where we started?
No, it's mountain.
Oh, yeah. I'm doing an ongoing project with Cadillac right now. That's Ivanka Trump. And that I did that for the cover of New York Magazine. And this is just after she got her divorce from Donald. It was a complete redo. Brand new chest, new face, new everything. And so she wanted to show that off. And that was all, that was all store-bought. Everything. You can even see, it looks like, are these nipples? I can't tell right there. But that's quite a dress, isn't it? She's still out and about. That's something I did for Breck. Remember the Breck girl? Well, they had a lot of Breck girls, but I had done something for those people. That's a Basquiat. That's another picture of that. That's Joan. That was something for my column. This is one of the Bozets from Miguel Bozet's sister. That's a kid out in Montauk. This is this whole group of surfers and stuff that were on Montauk. That's Man Ray right there. This was at his birthday party in Fregene, Italy. That's Washington, D.C. That's Suzanne Summers, Christy Nichols, Charlton Heston. Marcus Sabe, Nick something. This is called the Go See. Down in Florida, down in Miami in the like 80s, so many of the small buildings down there, modeling agencies opened up because the real estate was cheap, and all of the agencies, like from Germany and Italy, they had agencies down on the down in that strip down there, and so you'd see all these models all the time down there. I don't. If he has a portfolio, but I mean, if you were a guy or a girl, you pretty much had to show it off to get a job. I mean, that's Mick Jagger out in Montauk when they were rehearsing for one of their Rolling Stone tours, and they rented Andy Warhol's house in Montauk. Mark Sink. Paul, can you believe that's Mark Sink? These are two identical twins. Madonna with Kelly Klein and somebody else.
Ingrid.
What? Oh, Ingrid, right. That's a good picture. We all like that. So these pictures are, it looks like they're everything, but they're not. This book had, somehow many more pictures got in here than they're in this book. But it's this is actually when on top of the Pan American building, you could take a helicopter. Remember that period? Until one of them crashed over the side.
Oh,
that's getting a little treatment, some kind of treatment. By that. This is just all statue. Oh, this is that's the sound and light show at the pyramid. So when you go, if you get to go to Egypt or something, that is, you can go sit, you pay some money, and then they do the sound and light show, which is so cool. That's Stephen Dorff, the actor, playing Candy Darling in the movie I Shot Andy Warhol. That's Tennessee Williams. That's the last picture in my book, isn't it? The typewriter, yeah. Do you know who that is up here? Ran away, yeah. Vincent Fremont. Look at that car. So many of these things are based on shape, form, light, whether it's a person's nose. I mean, objects. David Bowie with Ava Cherry.
Well, these are also all pretty much natural croppings, right?
What?
This is full frame.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, these are not edited pictures. I didn't edit these pictures. I mean, not the sequence of them, but I mean, I didn't edit the picture, like crop them, come focus in on them. Is that the end? Because it doesn't go anywhere. Is that the last? Well, I can't say thank you for being such a patient audience.